In the vast expanse of the cosmos, the balance of power had always been a delicate dance among the stars. The Galactic Council, a formidable coalition of advanced alien civilizations, had long maintained order and exerted influence across galaxies. But as Earth's prominence rose unexpectedly, driven by rapid advancements and strategic diplomacy, tensions began to simmer. The Council, a complex assembly of species with diverse abilities and ancient heritage, had always viewed the upstart humans with a mix of curiosity and disdain. Their civilization, younger and seemingly less sophisticated, had never been a concern until now. Human colonies were expanding, their technology was evolving, and their role in interstellar trade and political alliances was becoming too significant to ignore. Among the tools of governance wielded by the Council were the Shadows, elite assassins renowned throughout the galaxy for their efficiency and ruthlessness. These Shadows were not just killers, they were specters of fear, capable of quelling rebellious thoughts and silencing dissent with whispered tales of their deeds. Their existence was the worst-kept secret of the Council, and their identities remained as elusive as the dark side of a moon. The rise of Earth presented a new challenge that the Shadows were summoned to address. The human leaders, charismatic and clever, had become linchpins in the growing network that threatened to shift the power dynamics within the Council's realms. The decision was made in the hushed, opulent chambers of the Council's headquarters. These leaders would be eliminated, a message that would sow fear and ensure compliance among other rising civilizations. But Earth was not as unprepared as they seemed. In the shadows of their own, human scientists and strategists had developed Ghost Tech, a revolutionary technology born out of necessity and the relentless human spirit to persevere. This technology rendered electronic surveillance useless and optical tracking obsolete, cloaking human movements in an impenetrable veil of invisibility. Ghost Tech was a game changer. It was developed in secret, tested in the depths of space and the darkest corners of the world. It represented the epitome of human innovation, using their understanding of light, quantum mechanics, and advanced materials to create a defense mechanism that could make their key leaders virtually undetectable. As the Galactic Council deployed their shadows, the stakes could not have been higher. Earth, once seen as a playground for political maneuvers, had quietly become a fortress of invisible walls and unseen watchers. The Council's move to neutralize the human threat was based on outdated intelligence, underestimating the ingenuity and resourcefulness of a species that had always been defined by its ability to survive and adapt. Thus, the stage was set for a confrontation that would redefine the power structures of the galaxy. The Shadows, confident in their abilities and backed by centuries of success, were about to face an enemy unlike any other, an enemy that could disappear at will. This was not just a mission, it was a test of evolution, technology, and the indomitable human will to forge their destiny among the stars. The Galactic Council's elite assassins arrived on Earth with a clear purpose, their mission calculated and precise. Each one was an expert in their field, honed by centuries of training and countless successful eliminations across the galaxy. They had brought down entire governments, silenced dissidents, and eliminated threats without so much as leaving a trace. Earth, to them, was just another target in a long list of civilizations to be subdued. But the moment their feet touched the ground, they realized something was different. Their first targets were human leaders, individuals whose influence had grown too great for the Galactic Council to ignore. These leaders were spread across major cities, seemingly unprotected and unaware of the danger heading their way. The assassins moved with efficiency, their movements swift and unseen. Using a combination of stealth, advanced alien technology, and lethal precision, they closed in on their targets, prepared to complete their mission as they always had. Yet, when the assassins arrived at the designated locations, something unexpected happened. Their targets weren't there. They had been mere moments away from striking, from finishing the mission, but their targets had simply vanished, disappeared without a trace. For the first time, these elite killers encountered something they had never faced before: confusion. The assassins regrouped, recalibrating their approach. They attributed the initial failure to some fluke, perhaps a miscalculation or bad timing. After all, the humans couldn't possibly have known about the mission. There was no warning, no communication between Earth and the Council. But as they adjusted their tactics and moved on to the next phase, the same thing happened again. Each carefully planned strike resulted in the same baffling outcome. The human targets were gone, as though they had simply faded into thin air moments before the assassins could act. As this pattern repeated itself across different locations, frustration began to set in. The assassins, once confident and methodical, started to second-guess their own skills and technology. They couldn't understand how humans, supposedly far inferior in terms of technology and resources, could elude them so effectively. The shadows, masters of silence and death, had never faced anything like this. Unbeknownst to the assassins, they were being watched. Earth's counterintelligence operatives had been monitoring their every move, guiding them into situations where failure was inevitable. Armed with ghost tech, these operatives had been anticipating the arrival of the assassins long before they even set foot on Earth. The targets were never random, nor were the locations of the strikes. Each movement of the assassins had been carefully observed, their strategies anticipated and countered with precision. The humans had turned the tables, using the Council's own tactics against them. Every failed assassination attempt was part of a larger, more intricate game. The assassins were not only being thwarted but manipulated, led down a path where they could not succeed. As the failed attempts piled up, the assassins began to realize that they were no longer the predators. They had become the prey. Slowly, the full weight of the situation dawned on the elite killers. Their equipment, once seen as the pinnacle of assassination technology, was being outclassed by something they didn't understand. The humans weren't just lucky, they were playing a different game entirely. With each passing moment, the assassins grew more disoriented, more paranoid. They began to wonder if there was a traitor among them, or if the humans had somehow developed technology that far surpassed anything the Council had imagined. Their confidence shattered, the assassins found themselves questioning everything they had been taught. Their sense of superiority, their belief in their infallibility, had been stripped away. They were outmatched, not by brute strength or overwhelming numbers, but by a technology that rendered them powerless. And the worst part? They didn't even know what they were fighting against. The assassins, already shaken by their earlier failures, began to take a more aggressive approach. Their techniques, refined over centuries, involved stalking their prey with precision, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Yet each attempt was met with a new kind of resistance. What had started as simple disappearances of their targets soon evolved into something far more unnerving. The humans, it seemed, were no longer just evading them, they were fighting back, and they were using the assassins' own methods against them. One by one, the assassins found themselves lured into situations where they believed they had the upper hand, only to realize too late that they had walked into carefully crafted traps. Ghost tech had rendered traditional surveillance and tracking useless, but it had also allowed the humans to observe the assassins in ways the Council could never have anticipated. Every move, every tactic, was anticipated and countered with lethal precision. The first trap was sprung in a high-profile location, one where the assassins were confident they could finally complete their mission. A human leader, seemingly isolated and vulnerable, became the perfect target. The assassin moved into position, carefully shadowing their prey, confident that this time the target wouldn't vanish. But as the assassin prepared for the strike, the tables turned. The human, aware of the assassin's every move, activated a defensive mechanism that rendered the assassin completely visible to local security forces. In an instant, the predator became the hunted, and the assassin was forced to retreat, barely escaping with their life. Word of this failure quickly spread among the remaining assassins, but it didn't end there. Soon after, another of the Council's finest was caught in a similar trap. This time, the human target lured the assassin into an abandoned building, only to lock them inside and release a barrage of electromagnetic pulses, frying the assassin's equipment and leaving them vulnerable. The assassin, stripped of their advanced gear, was no match for the human operatives who quickly neutralized them. The psychological toll of these failures began to weigh heavily on the group. They had never faced an enemy so adept at countering their every move. In the past, their missions had been straightforward: eliminate the target and disappear into the night. Now they were the ones disappearing, not in victory but in defeat. Worse still, the assassins couldn't trust their own instincts anymore. Every shadow, every movement felt like a potential trap. Their minds, once sharp and focused, became clouded with doubt. As the failures mounted, suspicion began to creep into their ranks. How could the humans know so much about their tactics? How could they anticipate each move so perfectly? The idea that there was a mole or traitor among them started to take root, further eroding the once unshakable unity of the team. Conversations became terse, glances filled with distrust. The assassins, who had always operated with seamless coordination, now questioned each other's loyalty and intentions. The humans, on the other hand, were playing a deeper psychological game. They understood the power of fear and doubt, and Ghost Tech allowed them to exploit it to its fullest potential. Every failed mission, every near miss, chipped away at the assassins' confidence. Their paranoia grew, and with it, their mistakes. Each time they regrouped to plan their next move, the seeds of mistrust were evident. They began to doubt not only their mission but each other. By the time the assassins realized the full extent of the humans' ingenuity, it was already too late. They had been outmaneuvered at every turn, and their confidence was shattered. The once invincible killers were now flailing in the dark, unsure of what was real and what was a trap. The psychological warfare the humans had employed was far more devastating than any weapon. They had taken the very techniques the assassins prided themselves on and turned them into tools of destruction, systematically breaking down the elite team from the inside out. The assassins, once masters of their craft, were now little more than frightened prey, caught in an invisible web of human design. Their greatest fear had come to life, not that they would fail, but that they no longer understood the enemy they were up against. In the wake of mounting failures and increasing paranoia, the remaining assassins gathered for one last desperate strategy session. They had exhausted their options, and the realization had set in that the humans were not just avoiding them, they were systematically dismantling their every move. With their team fractured and trust eroded, they reached a grim conclusion: the only path left was to capture the source of the humans' elusive power. The Ghost Tech had to be neutralized, or their mission would end in complete failure. The plan was ambitious, born out of necessity rather than confidence. They would infiltrate a top-secret human research facility, the rumored hub where Ghost Tech was being developed and tested. By seizing the technology, they believed they could reverse the tide of the mission and regain control. This time, there would be no missteps. The plan was precise, the route calculated, and they would go in with everything they had left. As the assassins prepared, they sharpened their focus, setting aside their doubts and suspicions for one last push. The mission to capture Ghost Tech was their final gambit, and they knew it. The facility itself was a fortress, deep in the heart of an industrial sector, surrounded by layers of security and defenses. Still, they had infiltrated fortresses before. This was supposed to be no different: get in, acquire the technology, and disappear into the night. But what the assassins didn't realize was that every move they made had already been anticipated. The humans, having observed and learned from the assassins' previous attempts, had prepared for this very moment. They had left a breadcrumb trail leading to the research facility, knowing full well that the assassins would eventually see it as their only option. It wasn't just a facility, it was a trap meticulously designed to lure them in. The assassins moved through the shadows, slipping past outer defenses with ease. As they reached the inner layers of the facility, they began to encounter more resistance, but nothing out of the ordinary. They took down security systems, neutralized guards, and moved closer to their objective. Everything seemed to be going according to plan, until they entered the core of the facility, the place where the Ghost Tech was supposedly housed. In an instant, the entire atmosphere shifted. The humans had been waiting. Ghost Tech, in its full capacity, activated the moment the assassins breached the final chamber. What the assassins thought would be a quick extraction turned into a nightmare. Invisible forces descended upon them, human operatives cloaked in Ghost Tech, using the very technology the assassins had come to steal. The hunters were now fully exposed, their every movement tracked, while their enemies remained unseen. The assassins tried to regroup, but it was too late. The humans struck with precision, using advanced ghost tech to disable the assassins' equipment and disrupt their communications. The facility became a maze of confusion and chaos. Doors that had been opened were suddenly sealed. Hallways that had been clear were now filled with invisible threats. The assassins, once masters of infiltration, were completely outmatched. One by one they fell. The first was overwhelmed by a human strike team, taken down before they could even react. Another assassin attempted to fight back, only to find that their weapons were ineffective against the advanced shields deployed by the human operatives. The humans had turned their own strategies into weapons of counterattack, exploiting the assassins' overconfidence and pushing them into a corner. The final moments were a blur of panic and defeat. The remaining assassins, realizing they were completely outclassed, made a desperate attempt to escape. But escape was no longer an option. Every exit was blocked, every path covered by the humans who had now fully mastered ghost tech. The mission, once so meticulously planned, crumbled in the face of superior human ingenuity. By the time the confrontation ended, the assassins had been either captured or eliminated. The once feared elite of the Galactic Council had fallen, their technology rendered obsolete, their skills outmatched. The humans had not only defended their world but had turned the very tools of the assassins into their own advantage. The Council's best were no longer a threat, reduced to mere echoes of their former selves. In the aftermath of the failed mission, the fate of the surviving assassins became uncertain. Some had perished in their final attempt, their pride and arrogance leading them to a bitter end. But a few managed to escape the immediate confrontation, only to face a much deeper internal battle. The realization that they had been bested, not by sheer force, but by the cunning and resilience of an enemy they had once considered inferior, weighed heavily on them. Disappearing into the shadows was no longer an option. The ones who survived faced a choice: return to the Galactic Council in disgrace or abandon their mission entirely. For some, the answer was clear. They had seen firsthand the power of human innovation and knew that going back meant not just failure but the loss of everything they had built their reputations on. A few defected to Earth, not out of loyalty, but out of respect for what they had witnessed. They knew that humanity was not the easy prey the Council had assumed and saw greater potential in aligning themselves with Earth rather than continuing to serve a regime that had underestimated such a formidable force. Back on the Council's homeworld, the news of the mission's failure sent shockwaves through the highest levels of leadership. The Council had always prided itself on its ability to control and neutralize threats before they escalated. The Shadows were their most trusted weapon, an infallible group that had never failed before. Yet, now, that illusion of invulnerability had been shattered. Not a single assassin had returned with success, and those who did come back carried nothing but stories of defeat and humiliation. The Council, for the first time, faced the reality that they had gravely misjudged the situation. Their reaction was a mix of disbelief and fear. How could a civilization like Earth, so young in comparison to the ancient empires of the galaxy, defeat their most elite operatives? The Council had always seen humans as unpredictable, but never as a genuine threat. This failure forced them to reconsider everything they thought they knew. Human adaptability, resourcefulness, and the sheer speed at which they developed new technologies had thrown the Council's calculations into disarray. The ghost tech was proof that humanity could not only compete with the galaxy's greatest powers but outmaneuver them. In the wake of this loss, the Council held emergency meetings, scrambling to understand what had gone wrong and how to proceed. There were voices that called for retaliation, suggesting that the humans had to be dealt with swiftly before they grew even stronger. Others, more cautious, argued that humanity had proven itself too unpredictable, and another misstep could lead to even greater consequences. The Council was divided, unsure of how to deal with a species that had outwitted them so completely. Amid these deliberations, there was a growing realization that the balance of power in the galaxy had shifted. Earth, once a backwater world, was now a key player. The failure of the assassins was not just a blow to the Council's prestige, it was a signal to the rest of the galaxy. Other civilizations, long wary of the Council's dominance, began to take notice. Whispers of rebellion and dissent grew louder, and factions that had once feared the Council's reach started to question its supremacy. The cracks in the Council's foundation were becoming visible. For humanity, the victory was a quiet one, but its significance was not lost on those who understood the broader implications. Earth had not only survived the Council's attack but had demonstrated a level of innovation and strategy that few other species could match. The humans had sent a message, not just to the Council, but to the entire galaxy. They were not to be underestimated, and they would not be easily conquered. As the Council regrouped, humanity continued to advance. There were still many challenges ahead, and the galaxy was far from peaceful. The defeat of the assassins was only the beginning. Earth knew that its position as a rising power would invite further attempts to subdue or control them. But with ghost tech in their arsenal and the lessons learned from the recent conflict, humans were more prepared than ever. The future held endless possibilities, and the tension between Earth and the Galactic Council hinted at conflicts yet to come. The Council's failure had set the stage for a new era, one where humanity would no longer be seen as an afterthought but as a force capable of changing the fate of the galaxy itself. The question now was whether the Council would attempt to reassert its dominance, or if Earth's unexpected defiance would spark a shift in galactic power, one that might forever alter the course of history.